of the day. I'm going to be switching off my video, sorry, because I don't want any lagging. So I'm going to start. Hello, everyone. Hope you're having a great day. Today, we will be discussing with you an educative session on the topic of climate crisis, the need of education for climate action. Climate change is going to leave a trail of destruction behind, not for the planet, but for the billions inhabiting this planet. We continue destroying habitats for our own selfish consumerism. Couple this with the millions of people who are trapped in a circle of poverty and are struck with the problem of gigantic proportions, not of our own doing, but a bunch of greedy humans. You would be shocked to know that just 100 companies today have been the source of more than 70% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions for the last 30 years. Yes, let that sink in. I'm just going to give you like 10 seconds to maybe let that big number sink in. A heartily welcome one and all. This is Rashi Mehta from Carbon Initiative Forum. And today with my team, Brinda Kulkarni and Sanjana Ulal, we're going to take you through an educational and interactive session on the importance of climate education and policy and how it can help in impeding climate change and boosting sustainable living. I would like to say that no country is immune to climate change and the forces it brings with it. But India is particularly vulnerable. Flattening the COVID curve wasn't easy, a piece of cake, and we couldn't do it before losing a lot of lives. I think flattening the climate change curve will be 100 times more difficult. The climate is changing, but are you? Please slide two, Sanjana. So here I'm going to be discussing a little on the need for climate education. I feel that the youth's future is flawed by climate change, but they are also the only ones who can do something about it. They need this knowledge the most, the knowledge of how and what climate change does and how they can adapt. They need the knowledge to inspire them into climate action in their own lives and through civil groups and governments for their own future. They also need to understand climate policy and its implementation at a local level to inspire change. You only tell me, how will we hold our policymakers accountable if we do not know what the real issue is at a granular level? That's something I think that is really important, which we all need to think about. So while I let you think about this, we have also prepared a little interactive activity for you where we have prepared a few poll questions. So I will just be putting my poll on and the question will show up on your screen. So the first question is, do you think climate change affects you? I'm giving some time for everyone to please fill in this question, yes or no. I have got 5 replies till now, 7. Only 50% have voted, I guess, and more replies are not. 8. Come on, we got 8. Any more people left, please? 9. Okay, so we have 9 votes, and everyone has replied yes. So I'm so glad. I'm just going to share the results so you can see it. So 9 people said yes and no one said no. So it's great that we know that people do think that climate change is affecting them. Now I'll move on to question number 2. Question number 2 is, do you launch poll, sorry. Do you consider yourself as a contributor to climate change? Yes or no? We have 6 replies till now, 8 replies, 9. This question is going much faster. Any more people wanting to vote? I'm just going to wait for another 4 seconds, maybe. So we have 10 people who have voted. I am just going to be sharing the results on the screen. So 9 people said yes and someone said no. I'm glad that maximum people do consider themselves as contributors to climate change because let's face it, each and every one of us is adding to the problem. None of us are totally safe. With that, I would stop my poll and move on to my PPT. Sanjana, if you could please move to the next. I'm just going to shut the poll. Here I would like to say that we all evidently know that climate change is real and it is time for us to do more. Education, awareness raising, and communication enable informed decision making. They also play an essential role in increasing adaptation and mitigation capacities of communities and empower all people to adopt a sustainable lifestyles. This has also been emphasized by UNESCO. The planet needs each one of us right now. It is now more than ever that the planet needs us. Please slide 4. So here I will tell you a little about who we are. Just to tell you a little about Carbon Initiative Forum, we are a non-profit that aims to educate and engage the youth through mainstreaming of climate policy and education. The main demographic is the youth, who we believe will be instrumental in countries' environmental fate as future decision makers. We don't believe that climate change has a single solution. There are a variety of solutions, and we need to take collective action. With that being said, I would like to say that we are a comprehensive platform to ask the right questions to the right people and gain clarity, while also educating the public about existing, impactful, and in-progress solutions towards the climate crisis in our country. Our primary target audience includes the youth of age group 14 to 28 years. But with that being said, our audience does not merely limit itself to the youth, but wishes to empower citizens and corporations across the country and to get aware and get involved. Please slide, next slide, Sanjana. So I would tell you briefly about our objectives. So CIF, one of our main objectives is to create city-level chapters which work at city-level issues. This movement will be run by dedicated volunteers who will act as climate champions. We actually want to create a community of change makers who will enable a larger movement and consequently a larger impact, wherein the current authorities, the government, the businesses, and the industries could be held accountable. This will help bring to their attention the ecological impacts that development has been having on the climate and will have in the future. So point number 2, our vision is to become a national platform growing and collated by the people from all walks of life who can connect with the youth. With this, I would like to say that we aim to mobilize this movement in the hope that our direct audience, which is you, will be the bearers for the change that we desperately need in the form of climate action, and be the voices for the local communities who bear the greatest consequences of climate change. With that, I think it's time for another poll at this point. I am just going to be putting my polling on. The question number 3 is, let me just launch it. I think it's popped up on your screens. Which do you think is more important, the environment or economy? I think I know my answer. Let's see what the group has to say. 6 people have replied, 7, 8, 9. 11 people. I'm glad more people are participating. I'm just going to give it another 4 seconds. Any last takers? Okay, so we have got 11 responses for this question. I'm just going to share the results. 64 people said the environment, and 36 people still believe that the economy is more important. According to me, I feel there needs to be a balance between the two, and only then can we achieve sustainable development. Because without, like, only one, it's not something to work around and be a successful nation where every citizen is given equal opportunities. Now I will stop my poll again, and I will move to my presentation. Sanjana, if you could please move to the next slide. Here, I would like to tell you all about a CIF Climate Club. This is an initiative that we have recently joined. We have recently started, sorry. We want you to join our club and volunteer as a planeteer. In this constantly changing world that we are living in today, one would think that a global pandemic would wake us up from our ignorance to finally appreciate that delicate balance in nature. So we at CIF feel that the dialogue today must shift and emphasize the need to stop and rethink all our actions, retrace our steps, and introspect on what went wrong and how we can salvage the situation. So I feel in this regard, education and awareness hold a great significance. It is now more than ever that the environment needs us. not just to raise our voices, but to be a part of the solution and make change a reality. Our motto is to make aware and inspire change. Let us all build back better. Volunteer for the climate change awareness and dialogue movement and become our climate champions. Are you ready? Um, with that, I think I will take you all through the remaining poll questions. And I have two more questions for my session. So, question number 4, let me just launch it. This is a very interesting question, and I'm really looking forward to know the answer. So, the question goes, what is the main source of information on climate change? Internet, books, social media, other people, or other forms of media like documentaries, magazines, radio, etc. Let's see what people have to say about this. I have 8 votes till now. Any more people? With every question, I get one more reply. I really love this. So we have 12 people who have voted. I'm just going to share the replies, share results. So internet is the highest with 58% saying internet. After that, sorry, the highest is social media. 75% people said social media. I actually expected social to be the answer because I think the youth is generally on social media the most nowadays. After that came the internet, followed by other forms of media. So other forms of media and internet kind of got 58%, which is at par. And after that came books and other people. So this just shows that other people are not doing enough to talk and create conversation around this topic. So that's something that we need to look into more, because people can be great influencers if they really want to be. Now my next question, I'm just going to stop sharing, and my last question for my talk. Just a sec. So climate change as a subject is boring, interesting, or necessary? Okay, I have 12 people who have responded again. I'm just going to be sharing that with the group. So 100% people actually think it's necessary, which is great news, because this is something which our entire session revolves around, the need for climate change education. So it's great that everyone thinks it's necessary, because I think it will help us in the long run to become better future decision makers in the future. I am just going to stop sharing my poll. And Sanjana, if you could please move to my last slide. So to sum it up, I would like to say that we are giving you an opportunity to be involved in a global cause. You are wanted. Reach out and influence as many people as you can to spread awareness so that they can become more aware and get more empowered moving forward. Support and drive policy for climate action, as well as compulsory climate education in schools and colleges. Climate change is forcing our societies, our economies, and our world to change. So I feel that our ways of doing business, our careers, and our jobs need to change too. With that, I would like to end my session and hand it over to my teammate Brinda, who will be taking you through an insightful talk on the need for climate education. Thanks, Brinda. You can please take over now.
Thanks, Rashi, for introducing everyone to our work and for setting the context. In this section of the session, we'll understand what the need for climate education is, the current trends in climate education, and also we'll have a brief overview on of what climate change curriculum might look like in the future and what we really need to be teaching. As we move through the slides, please feel free to ask your questions or ask me to slow down, or leave your thoughts and comments in the chat box. And if you have any questions, one of us will definitely get back to you. Before we move on, I just want to say my video will remain off to ensure connectivity. Just to reinforce the point again, if you have any questions, So to begin with, we really need to understand what the problem is. A lot of us are aware that global warming and the resulting climate change is problematic, but the issue is not really taken seriously enough yet. It is something that we all largely regard as an external problem that we as individuals do not have to engage with. World Wildlife Fund has put it so well. The trouble is we think we have time. So, but millions of people are going to be impacted by climate change in the near future, whether that's through sea level rise, extreme weather events like droughts or excessive unseasonal rains, which we've definitely been noticing in India this year, loss of biodiversity, or even melting of ice. All of these have a consequence to our to our daily lives, whether that's direct or indirect. So what we do in the little time that we do have is going to make all the difference. Can we move on to the next slide, please? So it is important to understand that climate change is not just about saving polar bears or the environment. It affects us all, including our communities, businesses, livelihoods, and our overall well-being. So as a collective, right now, our priorities are a little bit misplaced. The way we look at sustainability and climate change right now is from an angle of, like saving the environment or saving the planet. But that is not the case at all. It is actually 100% about our own existence, securing our existence, and choosing better odds for ourselves as a species. If we can move slide, please. Yeah, so in this kind of awareness means we see climate change as an issue that is present in our daily lives. To give you a better idea, here are top areas that are affected directly by climate change, right from our survival, our food and water supply, to the things that make our lives better, like technology and tourism. Climate change affects all of these industries regardless. It affects us with no regard to human labels that we attach to ourselves or to national or international borders. But it's important to understand that it affects vulnerable communities even more, whether that's people who live along coastlines or on islands, or people who are at a socio-economic disadvantage. So with that point, it is time for a poll. You will see a question pop up on your screens.
I'll just do that.
Yeah.
Poll number, and poll. Next. Question number 6.
Yes.
Launch poll. Yeah, you can take it.
Right. So the question is, which of these aspects of your own life do you think has the most impact on climate change? I hope you're all seeing the question on your screen, and please answer them. Mm-hmm. If we can get some more people to vote, just so we understand what you really think. Okay, so we can end the polling here. And okay, I'm not able to share the results.
I have shared it.
Maybe you can.
I have already shared it.
Okay, wonderful.
Are you able to view? Aren't you able to view it?
Yeah, I can. I can see it.
Yeah.
Okay. So energy and waste seem like we have a tie here. But the truth is, all of these aspects have an impact on the climate at varying levels. We will see later on in the session on how we can become more aware of our own impact and live more sustainably. Jumping back into the slides, I want to emphasize that the reason we're here in this global climate crisis is because of our collective action that came from a place of ignorance. And so in order to reverse the crisis, we need we need collective action again, but one that's more motivated from a positive side, and one that comes from a place of awareness. And this awareness can only come from education. If we can move to the next slide, please. Yeah, so where do we stand today with respect to climate change awareness and education? On the one hand, we have politicians who are responsible for influencing climate action, but they're denying the reality of global warming and climate change. And this is so dangerous because it's not just a political opinion at this point, it has serious implications for all of us, especially for the vulnerable communities. An example of this is where some countries led by politicians who are opting out of the Paris Agreement. And the fact that political interests are focused mostly in the short term, that is only until the next election comes around, is also a huge barrier to change. On that note, it's time for another poll. Rashi, you want to ask the next question? Okay, so the question is, would you consider climate change as an issue while voting? We have a couple of responses so far. I hope all of you can see the poll that's popping up on your screen. Okay, we have 50% votes. We're going to wait for 5 more seconds and then move ahead. Okay. So that's interesting. So we have 80% of participants who would consider climate change an issue while voting. This is great because it's important that responsible leaders and decision makers are elected. And to do so, we must keep the changing climate as we vote. So going back to our slides, along similar lines, we also have the academia and the teaching community. Many teachers across the world do not believe that climate change is important enough to be part of the curriculum. Or worse, they, like politicians, believe that climate change is not real. For example, 1 in 10 teachers in the USA deny human role in global warming discussions. And this is dangerous as well because teachers shape the belief systems of impressionable children and young adults. With this, we have another poll for you. We really want to know what you think. And Rashi, if you can share the next question. So do you currently study climate change as part of your curriculum, or did you studied when you were in school? The responses look promising so far. That's great. We'll wait for 5 more seconds and then move on. 5. Okay. Okay, so a majority of you already study climate, study climate change as part of your curriculum, which is wonderful. There's a slow shift when we are noticing a slow shift where teachers do realize the crisis that we have on hand and want to increase awareness through education, but they do not feel that they're prepared enough to teach about climate change to their students. India, for example, the world's 3rd largest emitter of greenhouse gases, and it is clear that we need action here, but are our teachers prepared to teach about climate change? Right now, I feel like there's so much room for improvement. There's also, so if you can move to the next slide. While this is one side of the challenge, on the other side, we have children and young adults who know that their life will be impacted by climate change in the future. They understand the need for action and they want to raise awareness. So they're starting movements. For example, the movement led by Greta Thunberg, where students are protesting to raise awareness about climate change and to draw leaders' attention to the climate crisis at hand. There's also a shift in the way youth perceive value. It is not just about money for people right now. In one survey, 44% of business school students said they were willing to accept lower salaries to work for more greener companies. So we also see a lot of interest from students about climate change, and they are demanding that climate change be part of their curriculum. And this just presents the polarity that exists currently. While on one hand, we have children and young adults wanting change, on the other hand, we have systems that do not deliver. If we can move to the next slide. Yeah, so there's a clear gap here, which brings us to the question, what do we need to teach, or how do we approach this? So we have a 3-tiered approach. The first step is basic climate literacy for all, which this includes educating youth and citizens about the science of climate change. and the link between global warming and human activity, and making that very clear. It includes raising awareness so we become more our own impact on the planet and its resources, while also becoming aware of how climate change impacts our everyday lives. And this knowledge will help us understand the collective implications of climate change as well, whether that's on the environment, social activities, on our overall well being or quality of life. The second level goes a bit deeper to understand how change affects employment and the challenges it presents. There's often a myth that people working in the climate change or sustainability space, they're the only ones who can influence change. But this is not true. We all have the power to influence change, no matter what our jobs are. And to be able to do this, we really need climate education that is in the context of our jobs. For example, medical students around the US are demanding that medical schools help them prepare for the world that they will practice in. So they want to understand what kind of challenges climate change can pose to their profession. So the world that they will be practicing is will be struck by extreme weather events, which is already happening. So which are caused by climate change, whether that's floods, hurricanes, heat waves, or forest fires. We've all seen that happening this year. And this is relevant not just for the medical community, but for all of us as well, no matter where we work. It is important that we understand the climate change on our own careers and employment, and increase our adaptability, and also see how we can influence change wherever we're working. And the third level goes even deeper, focuses on understanding climate policy and how we can influence change there. At CIF, we strongly believe that awareness and educating public, especially young adults, about climate policy, whether that's at international, national, regional, or local levels, is very, very impactful. A lot of the policies are technical, but they need to be made more simplified, and they need to be made more accessible so they can be easily understood. For example, we've all heard of Paris Agreement, right? And we hear about it a lot. But if I were to ask someone to give me a summary of what the Paris Agreement stands for and what their country commitments are in that context, I'm not sure if a lot of people would be able to answer that question. So actually, let's find out. Rashi, if you can put up the next question on the screen, the poll question. Yeah, so I hope you can see the screen. There should be a poll question that's popping up, which is basically asking, do you understand what the Paris Agreement is? We've all heard of it in the news, but do we actually have a basic understanding of what it's for? We'll wait for 5 more seconds and we'll move on. Okay. This is great because a lot of us do understand what Paris Agreement is. This is great news. But for those of us who do not understand, Sanjana, if we can move to the next slide. Yeah, understanding climate policy. So before we jump into this, we'll just understand why we need to understand climate policy. Why is it important? What does it do? So the reason is because climate change affects all of us, and we cannot just entrust our well-being and future only into the hands of a few and expect them to make changes. We all have to get involved as much as possible. So to understand and to give an understanding of what the Paris Agreement is, a very basic overview for those of us who do not know. Paris Agreement is a multilateral agreement with the United Nations body that focuses on climate change, and this was arrived at with an overarching goal of lowering greenhouse gas emissions. And there were 3 main ambitions in this agreement where all countries participated. The first one was to limit global warming and focus on net zero emissions. The second was to increase adaptation to the changing climate and build resilience. And the third was to make sure financial flows towards a greener world is more consistent. And this is on an international level, but on a more national level, the countries that participated were required to present their targets to lower greenhouse gas emissions to the UN body. And once that country officially signed the Paris Agreement, it would be held accountable for its targets. It would have to report on its progress each year. And this is what we call NDCs, or nationally determined contributions. For example, India's NDCs are to improve its emission intensity, increase its share of renewable energy, and to enhance forest cover to absorb carbon. I definitely was not aware of this until I had to, deep dive and made an effort to understand what the policy was. So it's important that we understand all of these things and consider these while we are voting, for example. If we can move to the next slide. So to conclude, why do we really need climate education in schools? Next slide, please. There's a very important, significant synergy that is brought about by climate change education. The first is political and governance accountability. So informed and aware youth are better positioned to elect responsible leaders and to hold them accountable for their commitments and actions. And this is very important because political and governance bodies are not just about politics; they influence all our lives every day, and the businesses and social development. So this is very important. The second one is conscious leadership. Schools, business schools, or schools in general, they shape the leaders and change makers of tomorrow. And these leaders, if these leaders make informed decisions bearing climate change in mind, this is just better for our overall well-being. The third one is community sustainability, where communities will be empowered to address climate change risks and threats that they might face, and they'll be able to anticipate these threats better, and they'll be able to adapt their livelihoods and adapt themselves better to a changing climate in a more proactive way. So this is empowering communities to be more independent. The last but not the least is responsible consumers. So informed consumers demand more sustainable products and services from companies and corporations, and they can again hold these companies and corporations accountable for their actions. So which will enable the creation of a greener economy, which is definitely the need of the hour. So we have only scratched the surface of understanding climate policy, but we really hope this was informative and left you curious about wanting to learn more about climate policy in your own country and context. My colleague Sanjana will take you through the next section where we can become more aware of our own impact on the climate. Sanjana?
Thank you, Brenda, for that. That was really, really informative. Now, before we move on to the next session, I think we should just take 2 seconds to soak in everything that we have just heard. I know it was a lot to take in, so I'm going to give it maybe like 2 to 5 seconds. All right. Now, I want to focus on 2 things that Brinda said taking forward. One is about us being informed consumers, and 2 is our impact on the planet. It seems that all of us have varying understanding of what the highest impact on our from our personal daily, from our daily activities, what our impact is. So it seems that you're all informed about your impact on the planet. But how much is this impact? And that's what we will look at through our carbon footprint. Now, what's a carbon footprint? And how do we calculate this carbon footprint? Unfortunately, a lot of our everyday activities contribute to carbon emissions. So what we eat, what clothes we buy, and even what we use to travel every day contributes to our carbon emissions. The total of all of these emissions from our activities is our carbon footprint. Now let's have a look at our calculator. So I'm just going to move on to our calculator, and someone is going to put that this particular bit on our chat. Seems I've got the wrong link up. Give me 1 second. All right, you should be able to come. Now, we wanted to make this session really interactive. So please click on the link in the chat and we can find out right now what our footprint is. You should ideally land on this page. I'm going to give us 2 seconds for all of us to open this either on your phone. It's compatible on your mobiles as well. So please look at this on your phone or on your laptop, whichever that you're using. I'm hoping everyone's on this page. So if we're here, or if you want to do this later, once you land on this page, please click on personal. I'm assuming a lot of us here are coming here as individuals, But unfortunately, some of the values that I know, like let's say the value of your carbon emission, of the energy intensity or the food waste that I produce, I know as a family. And if some of you, this is a youth festival, so I'm assuming a lot of us live with our parents or our guardians. So you may know this only as a family. So I want to click on family for us for it to become easier. Once you do that, you can enter your general information here. I have already done this before the session. Unfortunately, so I'm going to move on to that. Once you enter all of that, you're going to come up to three different aspects. So that's travel, energy, and waste. Now, like we said before, there's a number of things that we can contribute to from our daily activities. I understand that in 2020, because of COVID, we haven't been traveling a lot. So I'm going to look at something really simple for us to go look at now, and that is energy. I recently got my electricity bill, and it's calculated on a monthly basis for a family of three. So I live with two other roommates, and it said that our electricity consumption was 300 kilowatt hours. Now, let's say your billing period is something different, then you'll have to change it. Some people are lucky enough to get their electricity bills yearly, so you can then change it to yearly here by looking at the drop down box. But mine is monthly, so I'm going to stick with that. Now, you can see on the right hand side here that it says that my annual carbon emissions from just electricity consumption is 2.95 carbon dioxide equivalent. Let's ignore the carbon dioxide equivalent for now and just focus on the number that is 2.95. Now, this is divided by 3, I understand. So that's about 0.7 something, if I'm not wrong. Yeah. Now, the average emissions per person per year on a global basis is 4.8 tons. The highest emissions are from Australia, which is where I'm currently living, unfortunately. And that's followed by America and Canada. However, as Brinda pointed out before, India is the third highest emitter of greenhouse gas emissions, which is counted in carbon dioxide terms. So India is the third emitter of carbon dioxide equivalent terms. But due to our large population in India and even in China, the average emissions, however, will vary per person. But ignoring all of these stats, once you've done this or once you do this later, I wonder what you think about your general emissions. Do you think that it's a lot, or do you think it's really little? Before we move on to whether you're happy or disappointed with this, I do want to stress on something. There are some avoidable emissions and some unavoidable emissions. Like I said, each of our actions has carbon emissions. Yeah. So within our current system, we cannot have zero emissions. There's a systemic problem that exists. So let's say anything, if I buy even the most sustainable product, there are some carbon emissions related to it. But despite all of this, we should try to be sustainable. So here are ways that we have tried to make your life a little easier to think of to reduce your carbon emissions. Unfortunately, because I have to keep switching between slides, I'm going to stay on this view. I hope that's okay. So we're going to focus on 3 carbon reduction tips. The first one is lifestyle. Second one's transportation. The third one's air travel. And the fourth one's shopping. Now, under each of these points, you can come up with a number of things to reduce your carbon emissions, but I'm going to pick up one thing that's really super simple for us to do. So under lifestyle, something that I have done in the last year is try to go on to a plant-based diet. Now, this may mean either switching your milk, your yogurt, or anything that is relevant to your dairy industry, just switching at least one aspect of it. This or even reducing your meat consumption to maybe 3, 4, or 2 times a week. This is going to make a huge impact on your carbon emissions. The second one is transportation. Now, I know, like I said, last year we haven't been traveling a lot. We've been stuck at home. But once you start traveling in 2021 to your workplace, your university, your school, try to take public transportation, ride a bike, or walk to your school if it's really close by. That's going to be one aspect where your transportation emissions are going to reduce by a lot. The third one is air travel. We know that, I'm sorry, I'm not saying we do. So it's possible, I'm assuming that a lot of us know that air travel is consider flights to be its own country. That is the sixth largest emitting sixth largest carbon emitter in the world. So within your country, if you were planning to travel, especially if you're a travel enthusiast, then try to take the train or the bus, because this is going to reduce your carbon emissions. If you are trying for long haul flights and you are able to, then buy carbon offsets, which is one option with our carbon calculator. The last aspect that we're looking at is shopping. Now, I haven't bought something new in the last 1 year, and I have started to realize that we don't actually need as many clothes as we are believed to, as we are told to change within a year. Now, if we do want something, then try to look for either op shops or reuse clothes. So look to your family, your friends, or anyone in your circle that's willing to donate clothes to you, or even borrow for a certain time, a certain amount of time. I know I've done this with my best friends and my sister, where I've borrowed some of their clothes for a certain occasion. Now, these are certain tips, but there's a bunch of other things that you can do. Now, let's say you're one of the lucky few people who can claim that you have done all of this to reduce your avoidable emissions. There is still something that we can look at, and that is calculating your water footprint. Now, a water footprint measures the direct and indirect water use. So, direct consumption is using water for washing, like washing your car, washing your vessels, washing your home or your bathroom, cleaning, and consuming. While indirect consumption of water is used for producing clothes we wear, food we eat, and any other commodity we buy, unfortunately. We do not have a water footprint, but we are using the World Wildlife Fund's water calculator. Now, we don't have the time to go through each of that aspect, but we are going to put the link in the bio, and you can do this at a later date. So once you go into that, you should be able to, oops, I'm sorry, you should be able to see this particular screen, and it takes you through a couple of questions. So I'm going to go through 2 or 3 questions for us and then move on. So see how much water you consume. I um I unfortunately don't have a bucket at home, and I use a shower. So that's going to be shower. I take up to 5 to 10 minutes to shower. How long does your bathroom faucet run? And I think that this is something that we've taught from when we were children, that we should try to switch off our faucets when we're either brushing, shaving, or washing our hands. So these are a couple of questions. I'm not going to go through all, like I said before. I have done this before, though, and right before the session, and the amount of the water footprint that I have been given is 409 liters per day. Now that is really, really high. Why do I say it's really high? Is because the average consumption of water around the world is between 240 to 300 liters, or 80 to 100 gallons. So clearly mine is really on the high side. Now, how can I go about changing this? This is something that I've thought about for a couple of years, and I'm going to go back to tips to reduce water print. Now, as you can look at the screen, there's a number of ways you can do this, but I want to focus on 2 particular things. One is, like I said, I don't have a bucket at home, so and I use a shower. Taking shorter showers actually reduces the amount of water you use on a per day basis. So if you don't already use a bucket, then switch to a bucket bath. The second thing, the one A B, maybe not the second thing that I want to focus on, is fixing leaks in the house. Did you know that leaking faucets, or let's say any plumbing issue that you may have at home, actually wastes 90 gallons or 270 liters per day? That's almost equivalent to one person's entire consumption of water. So these are small things that we can be aware of. The last thing that I want to focus on, that I think also relates to our carbon emissions, is raising awareness. Something that I said before was around indirect water consumption. That's, even despite all the changes I can make that is available on the screen right now, I can't reduce my indirect water consumption. That can only be done through policy changes. So raise awareness of individuals in your family and your friend circle to their direct and indirect water usage. Together with them, you can advocate for policy changes to how water insensitive industries in your country or in your region are. By them making a sustainable change in water usage, you can reduce your indirect water footprint. There are a lot of corporate examples that we can take, but we don't want to name any particular industries. There is one link in the chat that we're going to put where a significantly a large corporate has reduced their water consumption. You can read more about what they've done to reduce this. But there's so much more that they can do. And until they make those necessary changes, we need to be advocating for those. Now, this brings me to the end of calculating both of our water footprint as well as our carbon footprint. And I know you've had a lot to process, so we want to open up the floor to any questions you had. If you think we've missed out on something and we should add it to this particular session, please let us know in the comments below. I'm also going to switch on my video, and my teammates might switch on their video so that we can answer these questions. I'm going to give us maybe one minute for us to see if there are any new questions, and then I'm going to move on with the session. Hi, everyone. I'm waiting for us to have some questions.
So we have one question.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
You
Brinda's
go
asked.
ahead. Yeah.
Sorry. Yes. So Brinda's asked me whether there are any other changes that we can make to our lifestyle to reduce our carbon footprint. That's a very, very important question, and I'm just going to go back to this slide where we look at these four aspects. Right. Let's say within lifestyle, there's a lot of changes you can make. So one of the things that we have done in the past year as a household is look at the amount of food waste that we generate, and we're trying to reduce that food waste. So back in Bangalore, which is my hometown, my mother has started composting her food waste. So we don't have any food waste that goes to the municipality. We compost our own waste and then we use it in the garden that's on our terrace. Where I'm living currently with my roommates, what we do is we tend to use as many things. Let's say we use orange peels, we soak that in vinegar and then make that as a household cleaner. Whereas, let's say banana peels, we use it as a fertilizer for our little homemade garden. So there's small things, and I'm not saying I'm an expert on this. You can always Google a bunch of this, and there's a definite amount of tips that even you, let's say you don't have your own house, but you live with your parents, and there's certain changes you want to make. You can still make those changes by looking it up online. But these are certain tips. I think food waste is one of our biggest contributors, and we should definitely be looking at what all we throw in our bins.
Agreed.
I hope that answers your question, Bri.
Yeah, I didn't ask that question, just to make it clear. I think someone's joined, and I guess
a lot of names are actually coming as Brinda Kulkarni. I don't know.
But add to that point, I feel like, just becoming more conscious of our own consumption in whatever we consume, whether that's electricity, whether that's water, whether that's food, whether that's shopping, or the things that we get online, or the food that we order online. Just being more aware of what kind of impact that might have on the environment and on the climate, that'll just help us. We don't even have to Google. That'll just tell us what our next step should be. So just becoming more conscious about our consumerism and our consumption, that I feel like is the first step that we should all be taking.
Yeah, I think that's something really important. Just like basic steps, like if I need to take a print, do I need to really take this print, or can I do without this print? Just some basic things that we should act on when we're making our daily lifestyle choices. I think that's something that everyone should consciously feel from within. I mean, it's a slow run, but if you start thinking in that direction, I think you can reach where it's an everyday habit, eventually for us. And I think that will take us a long way.
Yeah,
I agree. Yes.
Yes,
we have another question, and it is how to control bad impact on the environment. Well, I think that's a very valid question, and some of our tips I hope helps you. So carbon reduction tips, how do you reduce your water footprint? All of those are ways to reduce your impact. But I think it's also really important for us to remember that a lot of the current carbon emissions or the current water consumption that we have comes from big emitters like corporations. We should be advocating and really vocal about the changes we want to see from our industries and from our governments. Go back and look at your government's NDCs, as Brinda said. See if they're making reasonable changes within the next couple of years to actually reduce the impacts of climate change. If you think they're not doing that, join a Fridays for Future protest in your country, in your city. or even join CIF. And we are doing so much to raise awareness about climate policy within schools so that we can ask questions to our ministers in power saying, what are you doing about climate change that affects all of us in the next 10 or so years? It's already affecting people in vulnerable communities. What can we do to make an effort to change this? I hope that answers your question. Um, Now we have another question from Aisha. It says, what resources and where can we access for holding larger organizations and corporations accountable? That's a very, very important question. Most countries should be able to comment on certain legislations that your governments are making. You should also, so if you go into into the government's site, then there are legislations that are put up for comments by the general public. You can make comments on these suggestions. You can also use your voice on social media, start a petition on change.org or any other website to say that you want change. Start a fundraising campaign for change so that your minister in power realizes that the people's voices have an impact and they want certain changes to be seen in the near future. For corporations, something that I have seen is when I write to certain corporations, you will be surprised that some customer relation teams will actually get back to you and say, oh, we've made a note of this, we will make a change. Will that happen? Maybe not. But us playing a part in saying, me as a consumer of your product do not like that you use plastic in your products or you use any other unsustainable means of packaging, actually is being accounted for from their side. So write to your favorite brand and say, I don't like that you do this. And maybe you'll see a change in a couple of years. Or like I said, start a petition, gather a couple of people, and then maybe you'll see change. There's another question by Ajay, which says, is sustainable development meant for developed nations alone? Developing nations need to address more fundamental issues like poverty. Something that I've learned in the past couple of years through research and my work experience is that intersectionality is an important aspect of us looking at climate crisis, poverty, or any other social issue. We cannot be working in one particular aspect by ignoring the other particular aspect. Now, something that Brinda said before, and even Rashi said before, was that how climate crisis affects people in poverty, right? So addressing climate crisis will address how people in poverty are treated. But I'm not saying we should stop work on all of our poverty reduction schemes that are there in our particular countries. We should be looking at it simultaneously. I know that seems really complicated and hard, but it is something that we must hold our government accountable to.
Yeah, and to add, I don't think it's
I think one thing sorry. No, go ahead.
Yeah, so I don't think it's a case of choosing one over the other. Sustainable development is not just about the environment or emissions. Sustainable development essentially means, leaving no one behind. That's one of the sustainable development goals, where we all collectively grow and focus on well-being for all of us. That includes the environment, the animals, the people. Yeah. That's basically everything on earth.
Yeah, I think it's really important because one of the things like people and the youth can do is like support these initiatives, which are leading to capacity building and training of these communities. So they can also adopt these sustainable lifestyles. For example, agriculture. Like a country like India, 70% is agri-based, right? So most of our farmers, if everyone supports them into getting into sustainable farming and supports their projects, I think that's a win-win for all, where we're not too dependent on the government also, but we are also doing our bit, Every time, see, the government is really important to make the laws and the policies and all, but till we don't push them and demand for something, I don't think it would happen fast. So if we want faster action, I think everyone needs to ask for these things to the government.
Agreed.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that education becomes really important. And being involved becomes really important.
Yeah.
Yes. I was actually just going to say that, Rashi.
There's one more question, if you want to start. Yeah.
Yes, I will. And I think I was just going to say that climate education is where understanding certain climate policies within your current context, within your local context, actually is going to make you more aware of what's happening, and then ask for better changes by understanding where you stand. But then again, like we said before, while we should be asking our governments and our corporates that provide us with these products to make changes, I think sustainable changes from our end is also necessary. Now, there's one last question about from Suresh. It says, "Great insights. How does the impact vary between waste and climate change and water? How to integrate them together? Any thoughts?" I would say that all of the waste, water, and any other issue comes under the umbrella of climate crisis. How can we integrate them together? I think we should be working on them simultaneously, and that's how we will end up integrating them together. So reducing your waste, but also asking your municipality. So I come from India, and there are certain localities that still do not segregate waste at source, and I know this is not an India specific problem. There are localities across the world that actually do not segregate waste at source. That makes a huge difference. My municipality back in India started segregating because of people power, and I think that's something that we can do from our end as well. Supporting changes within our government, asking them to change, and also making changes within our own lifestyles is all going to lead the way to a more sustainable future. That's how we can integrate it together. I know it's a really complex process, and over the last 4 years working in this space, it has been really hard, and it is going to be really hard. But I think what we should understand, it's a long road ahead, and it is a long battle. But we are making so many changes. Like Brinda said, people like Greta Thunberg, they've been she's much younger than me, and she's been making so much of a change from just her from Sweden. She's gone across the globe, right? And that's something that we can strive to do in our own spaces. We should also be mindful though of people that come from different circumstances that can't make sustainable changes within their life, but if they're willing to help us in asking governments and corporates to make those changes, we should involve them in the fight. I see that there's a couple more things in the chat. However, because we're running out of time, I'm just going to move on to the last slide. I hope that's okay.
Yes. If I could just
sorry.
go to
Yeah.
this question and answer, I think it's just one last question, and it's
Sorry,
very
have a
Poll, yeah.
and how do we filter the news or organizations that promote sustainable development by implementing greenwashing strategies? And that ties in perfectly with our session because we're talking about climate education and being more aware of sustainability. So if you know what you're talking about, if you know what sustainability truly is, then identifying greenwashing is not very hard. Like you can call out companies right when they when they talk about greenwashing or attempt to greenwash. So that's a very quick answer, very short answer, I know, very simplified one, but I feel like it all comes down to awareness. Yeah.
Yep, Brinda. I know that Rashi just shared a poll with all of us, which says, "Are you prepared to talk to your friends, your family, your school, government, or any brand that you really like about sustainable changes?" And I hope we can see some answers soon. While people answer that question, I would like to reiterate what Brinda said. It is, I think, this entire session about awareness from your own end about who is actually greenwashing you versus who's actually making a lot of changes is really important. And that's going to make a lot. Unfortunately, I can't see it on my screen.
I'm just going to share it.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Wow, it seems everyone that's answered has said yes, and I'm really happy, and I'm hoping that our session has helped you with some pointers that you can use with your family or friends. If you want to quickly read our key takeaways from this session, please feel free to do so. Thank you so much for joining Rashi, Brinda, and I on this session about climate education awareness.
I would just like to add, if you could just take it to the last slide, Sanjana. We would really appreciate if you could check our website out and follow, test the carbon calculator. We have the link there, and we have put it in the chat box, as well as please do follow us on our social media handles of Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Thank you.
With cif.org everywhere, spelled out. Should we go back to the key takeaways?
So I think we are done. Are we done, or are we going back to something?
We're done. I just wanted to put the takeaways on the screen while we wrapped it up.
Yeah. Okay, sounds good.
Thank you
So
everyone again for joining us. Rashi has a couple of things to say. I see. Continue, Rashi.
yeah, I just wanted to tell Drishya that we were done with our session. So if there is something that's going to continue after that, we could start with that.
Right.
Thank you, Rashi. Thank you, Sanjana, and thank you, Brinda, for this amazing session. I just want to ask if we have Kamal or Sam Wilson who have joined the meeting, then we will continue. Otherwise, we'll have to end the session right here. So can I
Yes,
ask again,
I'm here.
Kamal? Yeah, okay. So maybe, Kamal, we can start with your presentation. Would you like to go ahead?
Yeah, sure. I would like to, but okay, let me share my screen.
Yeah, sure.
Does-
I don't know if you can see it. Can you see my screen?
Not yet. Can you try?
Yeah, it's saying has failed to start. Please try again. There is an error message. I don't know why it's showing me this. It seems like I can't share my screen. It's not allowing me to do so. Oh. I think I'm not sure if I'll be able to share it because there's a problem somewhere. Can you hear me? I think that's a problem.
Yes, Kamal, we can hear you, but we can't see your screen.
Yeah, I think that's a problem with the share screen here. It's not allowing me to do so. I don't know if I can just present it like that without the slides, because there's a problem with the slides, the share screen. I think that's a problem.
Please go ahead.
Okay. Okay. My main project is about formal education for people called Almatri in Nigeria. And the main reason why I decided to do this project was an inspiration from someone. She is here with us. Her name is Noor. She's from Tunisia. So she's the one who inspired me to continue doing this work. And the main reason why I decided to go on with this project is because in Nigeria, especially in the northern part of Nigeria, there are some people that have no formal education. And because they lack formal education, they can't read, write, or even get formal jobs. So to change this course, I decided to come up with this project, which I'm going to implement and to change their future. And the main objectives of this project is to ease the burden of their teachers, because normally these people, what they do is that they roam around the street in order to beg and get something to eat. And also, my intention is to motivate the student to go to school and also prepare them for their future. While looking at this project, I decided to look at the environmental effects. As we all know, is that now we are having environmental challenges, and what these people do, because they can neither read nor write, they litter the environment and they throw plastics, bottles anyhow on the roadside, thereby choking the waterways. And also there's what is called social problem, which is seriously affecting the country now. We are having more sadists and bandits, because these people have no formal education, they're not educated, they feel like, oh, we can just do whatever we want because no one cares for us in the society. And also, my main goal is to limit the barrier between the people that are educated and people that are not educated. In Nigeria, northern part of Nigeria, for example, the case of a city in Nigeria called Kano State, there are over 3,000 people in the name of Almajiri who have no formal education, and this is really leading to problems in the city. And also, since the start of this pandemic, the people have been exposed to coronavirus, and also it shows how unequal they are in the society. And because these people have no education, and also that they have no certificate to show, it's impossible for them to apply for jobs. So my main project now, what I want to do, looking at these problems, is just to focus on the people called Al-Majri. And because I believe that they are all, Al-Majri is also a child, someone that needs to go to school, someone that needs to be educated. And if I will be able to change their fortune, I believe that they will just also benefit not just themselves but also the society. And the target is to increase the literacy rate by 90% in some parts of the country, especially in northern parts of the country, and also to help protect the environment, because I believe that educating the Almajiris will help them think well and also make them know how to handle the environmental challenges and also solve the problem of climate change. And to carry out this project, I intend to do it in 3 phases. The first one is to identify a local government in Kano State, like a small place, in order to see who we need to start with. And also in phase 2, we will look at 3 other schools or 3 other local governments in order to make the project feasible. And lastly, in phase 3, we will capture all the local government. From there, we'll just work on this project and see how progressive it will be. Then from there, we can start thinking of conquering the state and also the country as a whole. So in brief, this is all about my project. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Kamal. Thank you so much. I just want to tell you that although I'm sure you joined the other session, the award ceremony, I saw you were joining that. So I just want to inform you that whatever details were shared by you, because we actually tried reaching out to you, if you can share your presentation. So because we didn't receive the presentation, so we did evaluated your project based on your registration. Okay. So because we were supposed to evaluate everything before the closing session, so we did that. And we did consider your project while evaluating it, but we definitely had to provide you the platform to make your presentation. So thank you so much. And I'm sure you have been doing an amazing job. Thank you for connecting with the POP family. And please stay connected, because we keep getting such platforms and such opportunities for everybody to join and present their work. I also would like to thank you for joining the other session and then coming and making your presentation in this session.